You have been doing it right for years. You cut the subscriptions, you meal prepped, you drove the old car longer than you wanted to, you skipped the vacation, you said no to things your colleagues said yes to without thinking twice. You have been disciplined, consistent, responsible, and the gap between where you are and where you want to be has barely moved. Not because you were not trying hard enough, because the strategy you were handed was never designed to close that gap. It was designed to manage it. So here's the question this video is going to answer. Why is living below your means terrible advice? Not because spending recklessly is smart, not because financial discipline does not matter. Because live below your means, the way it is taught, the way it is practiced, the way it is celebrated as virtue, is a poverty mindset with better branding. And the three costs of that mindset are quietly compounding against you right now. Stay with this one, because the third cost, the one about what years of deliberate deprivation does to your sense of what you deserve, is the one that will make you rethink every financial decision you have made for the last decade. 3 costs of the advice everyone told you was the foundation of wealth. The first cost: you cannot subtract your way to wealth. Here is the mathematics of living below your means, stripped of the virtue, stripped of the discipline narrative, just the numbers. You earn $85,000 a year. You spend $70,000 a year. You save $15,000 a year. That is 17.6% of your income, above the standard 20% recommendation some months, below it others. By most personal finance metrics, you're doing well. Now here is the number nobody talks about: your ceiling. The maximum you can ever save in a year, assuming you eliminate every single discretionary expense, every subscription, every meal out, every coffee, every vacation, every upgrade, is $85,000. That is it. That is the mathematical ceiling of the live below your means strategy. You cannot save more than you earn. You cannot cut below zero. The ceiling is fixed, it is permanent, and it is set entirely by your income, a number someone else controls. Now look at the other side of the equation. Your income has no ceiling. None. A skill developed and positioned correctly can add $20,000 to your annual income. A business built around a high-value problem can add $50,000. A career pivot into a higher leverage role can add $30,000. A negotiation executed with the right data can add $15,000. Each one of those moves, none of which require cutting a single subscription, produces more wealth than years of disciplined frugality ever could. Here is what that actually means in real numbers. The average American household saves less than 5% of their income. According to Federal Reserve data, the personal savings rate has averaged between 3.5% and 5% in recent years. On an $85,000 salary, that is roughly $250 to $350 a month. A disciplined live below your means household, cutting aggressively, might stretch that to $1,200 a month. That is the ceiling of the cutting game, the maximum prize for winning at deprivation. Now look at the income side. A single skill upgrade, a high-demand certification, a freelance service, a repositioned value proposition can add $500 to $2,000 a month to your income permanently, every month, without cutting anything, without saying no to anything, without shrinking your life in any direction. The math is not close. And yet most people spend years optimizing the subtraction side of the equation, tracking every dollar out, while giving almost no deliberate attention to the addition side. Not because addition is harder, because subtraction feels like control. You can see the expense going down. You can track it, log it, celebrate it. Income growth is messier, less predictable, less immediately satisfying. So the personal finance industry sells you the thing that feels like progress and calls it wisdom. Now make this personal. How many hours in the last 12 months did you spend tracking, cutting, optimizing your spending? And how many hours did you spend deliberately, specifically, strategically working to increase your income? If the answer to the first question is larger than the answer to the second, you have been playing a game with a fixed ceiling, while a game with no ceiling was available the entire time. This is exactly what we covered in Why Budgeting Will Never Make You Rich. The difference between managing scarcity and building abundance. Two completely different games. Most people are playing the wrong one and calling it financial responsibility. The first cost. You cannot subtract your way to wealth. The ceiling on cutting is 0. The ceiling on growth does not exist. The second cost. Years of living below your means rewires how you think. This is the cost nobody warns you about because it does not show up on a balance sheet. It does not appear in a savings rate calculation. It is invisible until it is not. Here is what happens when you spend years, consistently, deliberately, training yourself to want less, spend less, expect less. Your brain learns the lesson, not just about money, about everything. The neuroscience of scarcity is well documented. When the mind operates under consistent resource constraint, even self-imposed constraint, it narrows its focus. It becomes short-term oriented. It defaults to loss avoidance over opportunity seeking. Researchers at Princeton and Harvard found that people operating under scarcity, financial or otherwise, consistently underperform on cognitive tasks requiring long-term thinking, creative problem-solving, and risk assessment. Not because they are less intelligent, because scarcity consumes cognitive bandwidth. Here is what that means for you specifically. Every year you spend in deliberate deprivation mode, tracking every dollar, saying no to every upgrade, shrinking every expectation, is a year your financial thinking is being shaped by a scarcity framework. And a scarcity framework does not ask, what is the biggest opportunity available to me right now? It asks, what is the safest way to protect what I already have? Those are not the same question. One question builds wealth. One question manages the fear of losing what little you have accumulated. Think about the last time a real financial opportunity appeared in front of you. A business idea with genuine potential. A career move that would have required investing in yourself first. A skill that would have cost money up front, but repositioned your earning power permanently. What did you do? Did you evaluate it on its merits, its return potential, its strategic value, its ceiling? Or did you immediately calculate the cost, feel the familiar tightening of the scarcity reflex, and find a reason to pass? Because years of living below your means trains a very specific response to that moment. It trains you to see the cost first, the risk first, the downside first. Not because you are risk-averse by nature, because you have been practicing a financial philosophy that treats every dollar spent as a threat. And that practice rewires the default response. The person who has spent 10 years optimizing for spending less does not suddenly flip into opportunity-seeking mode when a high-return investment appears. They see the price tag, they feel the familiar resistance, and they say, I cannot afford that. Not because they cannot, because 10 years of deliberate deprivation has redefined what afford means. Ask yourself honestly, is your current definition of what you can afford based on your actual financial capacity? Or is it based on a decade of training yourself to believe that wanting less is the same as being responsible? Those are not the same thing. Responsibility is knowing your numbers and making deliberate decisions. Deprivation is shrinking your expectations so consistently that you stop being able to tell the difference between a real constraint and a trained reflex. One of those builds wealth. One of those just feels like it does. The second cost, years of deliberate deprivation, does not build discipline. It builds a scarcity reflex that filters out the opportunities that would have changed everything. The third cost, Living below your means slowly redefines who you think you are. This is the cost that makes people genuinely uncomfortable when they finally look at it directly. So look at it directly. When you spend years, consistently, repeatedly, as a matter of identity, choosing the cheaper option, deferring the upgrade, saying no to the thing you actually want, you are not just making financial decisions. You are telling yourself a story about the kind of person you are. And eventually, you start to believe it. The story goes like this. I am someone who does not need much. I am someone who is content with less. I am someone who finds extravagance irresponsible. I am someone who earns X, and people who earn X live like this. That story feels like virtue. It is socially rewarded, culturally celebrated, financially endorsed, and it is quietly destroying your ability to build real wealth. Because wealth, real wealth, the kind that generates options and freedom and the ability to say no to things you do not want, requires a fundamentally different identity. Not an extravagant one, not a reckless one, an expansive one. The identity of someone who is always asking, how do I make this bigger, not smaller? How do I grow into a life that requires more of me, rather than shrink into one that asks less? Here is what years of live below your means does to that identity. It inverts it. The person who has spent a decade celebrating frugality as virtue does not easily become the person who invests $5,000 in a course that repositions their career. Not because they cannot afford it, because somewhere along the way, spending $5,000 on themselves started to feel wrong, irresponsible, self-indulgent, the kind of thing that people who are not serious about money do. And that feeling, that trained, practiced, deeply embedded discomfort with investing in your own growth, is the most expensive thing living below your means ever produced. More expensive than any subscription you canceled. More expensive than any vacation you skipped. More expensive than any upgrade you deferred. Because the subscription was $15 a month. The career investment you did not make because it felt irresponsible, that had a ceiling you will never see. Because you never found out where it went. Now ask yourself the question that this cost is actually asking. What have you not invested in about yourself, your skills, your capacity, your positioning, because the version of you that lives below your means decided it was not the kind of thing responsible people spend money on? Not a luxury, not an indulgence, a genuine investment in your own growth that you passed on because the identity you built around frugality made it feel like waste. That is not discipline. That is the most expensive story you have ever told yourself. And the longer you tell it, the more it becomes true. Not because the investment stopped being available, because the person who would have made it stopped being who you are. The third cost. Living below your means long enough does not just shrink your spending, it shrinks your sense of what you are worth. And a shrunken self-worth is the most expensive financial liability you will ever carry. The closing. What it actually means to live within a strategy that builds wealth. 3 costs. 1 source. The math ceiling that ensures you can never cut your way to freedom. The scarcity reflex that filters out the opportunities that would have changed your trajectory. The identity erosion that quietly redefines what you believe you are capable of and worth. None of this is an argument for reckless spending, not even close. Financial discipline matters. Knowing your numbers matters. Not consuming beyond your means matters. But there is a version of financial discipline that is expansive and a version that is contracting. The expansive version looks like this. You know your numbers completely. You protect your savings rate aggressively. And then, With every remaining hour, every available dollar of capital, every unit of attention that is not locked into protecting the floor, you invest in growth, in skills that command higher rates, in positioning that attracts better opportunities, in your own capacity to earn, build, and create more. Not from a place of scarcity, desperately trying to make something from nothing. From a place of strategy, deliberately expanding your means so that living well within them becomes effortless. The goal was never to shrink your life until it fits inside your income. The goal was always to grow your income until your life fits comfortably inside it. Those two strategies look similar from the outside. Both involve discipline. Both involve choices. Both involve saying no to some things. But one is pointed inward, at the life you already have, trying to make it smaller and more manageable. And one is pointed outward, at the life you have not built yet, asking what it would take to get there. Stop optimizing for less. Start building for more. Not because frugality is wrong, because frugality without growth is just an organized version of staying exactly where you are. And staying exactly where you are, with a very tidy budget and a very disciplined savings rate and a very well-managed version of not enough, is not the point. Every video on this channel starts with why. Why your salary is keeping you poor. Why most side hustles keep you poor. Why working harder is making you poorer. Every rule you were handed about money, questioned. If this one made you question the rule you were most certain about, that is exactly where it was supposed to land. Remember this: do not live below your means. Expand your means until living well within them is no longer a sacrifice. That is the only version of this advice worth following.